Hey guys, welcome to DIY Crafts. In this video, I am going to show you a step-by-step pattern of making this cute onion amigurumi for vegetable basket play food set for kids. So let's get started. For this, I am going to use cotton 4-ply yarn and a crochet hook of size 3 mm. Now I am going to begin with this green color to make green onion on the top of our amigurumi onion. Now leave a little long tail end at the beginning and begin with a slip knot. Now adjust the loop and make chain 6. This chain 6 is just an approximation. If you wanted a lengthier spring onions, you can go up to chain 7 or 10 according to your wish. Now skip the first stitch from the hook and make slip stitch in each and every chain. We are going to have 5 slip stitches. That's the first one, 2, 3, 4, and finally the 5th one. And this 5th stitch, the chain, is considered as the center point. And likewise continue to make 2 more spring onion. Here I have made chain 5 and I'm going to get 5 slip stitches. That's 4th one and 5th one into the first stitch. Again chain 6, skip the first chain from the hook and make 5 slip stitches in each and every chain and make the 6th one at the first one. Now chain 1 and trim the excess thread by leaving a little long tail end, and these 2 tail ends, grab them together and make a knot to get the shape of a spring onion. If you want, you can make even 4 or 5 spring onions. Just follow the same pattern of chain and slip stitch throughout the chain and attaching it to the first stitch. Now put this aside and let's start making onion. For this I am using this pink color, which is close to the color of a real onion. Now I am going to begin with a magic ring. Now chain 1 and let's start making the first round. For this, make 6 single crochet stitches into the center. That's the 3rd one. 4, adjust the loop, 5, 6, and this completes your first row. Now pull the tail end tightly, and instead of making a slip stitch, we are going to work in rounds. So insert the hook into the first stitch and make a single stitch, and this is the beginning of the second row. So mark it with a stitch marker and then make 1 single crochet stitch in each and every stitch throughout the row until you reach the starting point. Now this completes your second row with 6 single crochet stitches. Adjust the work. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making the 3rd row. For this, make 2 single crochet stitches into the next stitch. This we call it as an increase. Now put the stitch marker back into the first stitch to mark the beginning of 3rd row, and then continue to make increases in each and every stitch throughout the row until you reach the starting point. So after making all the increases, we will have a total of 12 stitches in 3rd row. Now remove the stitch marker and make 1 single stitch into the next stitch. Now put the stitch marker back into the place to mark the beginning of the 4th row. And for the 4th row, we have already done 1 single stitch, and now we are going to make 1 single stitch in each and every stitch throughout the row until you reach the starting point. We are not going to make any increases in this row, which means by the end of the 4th row also you will have only 12 single stitches. You can now see the shape of the onion. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making round number 5. For this, begin with a single stitch. Now put the stitch marker to mark the beginning of the 5th row, and now into the next stitch make an increase, which means 2 single crochet stitches into the same stitch. Again make one single stitch in the next stitch followed by an increase in the next stitch. Now we are going to repeat this pattern of one single stitch and one increase throughout the row until you reach the starting point, which means we have to work this pattern for 6 times. Now after making the last increase in this row, we are going to have 18 stitches. Now stop it here to add the spring onion on the top of this. Now take this spring onion and attach it to the top of the onion with the help of a yarn needle as shown. Meanwhile, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do subscribe and click on the bell icon to receive the notifications for my latest videos. Here, to make the knot closer to this tip, I have just flipped my work to make the knot. After making a knot, trim the threads by leaving a little tail end. Now again turn your work as it is, and now let's continue with the pattern. Remove the stitch marker and make the single stitch in the next stitch. Now put the stitch marker into the same stitch. That's the beginning of a 6th row. Now make one single crochet stitch in each and every stitch throughout the row until you reach the starting point. We are not making any increases in this particular row, which means by the end of the 6th row you will have 18 single crochet stitches. This is the last stitch in 6th row and this completes your 6th row. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making the 7th row. Make one single crochet stitch in this stitch and now put the stitch marker back into that place. Now make an increase in the next stitch. That's 2 single crochet stitches, and in the next stitch make 1 stitch. So now we are going to repeat this pattern of 1 single stitch, increase and 1 single stitch throughout the row. That's an increase and then a single stitch. Again make 1 single stitch, increase and a single stitch throughout the row. Now here I am making the last single stitch of the 7th row, and by the end of the 7th row you will have 24 stitches. Now remove the stitch marker and make a single stitch in the next stitch. Now put the stitch marker into that stitch and mark the beginning of 8th row. Now make 2 more single crochet stitches. That's the second one and this is the third one. And now into the next stitch make an increase. That's 2 single crochet stitches into the same stitch. Now repeat the same pattern throughout the row until you reach the starting point. Now making the last increase in this row, and this completes your 8th row with 30 single crochet stitches. Now remove the stitch marker and make a single crochet in the next stitch and mark the beginning of the 9th row. We have already done 1 single stitch in 9th row, so I am going to make a second single stitch in the next stitch and now make an increase. Then make single crochet stitches in next 2 stitches. So now we are going to repeat this pattern of 2 single crochet stitches, increase and 2 single crochet stitches throughout the row until you reach the starting point. Now make the last 2 single crochet stitches, and this completes your 9th row with 36 single crochet stitches. Here it is taking the round shape as you can see here. Now remove the stitch marker and let's start making round 10. Mark the beginning of 10th row with a single stitch. That's the second one, third, 4 and 5. After 5 single crochet stitches, make an increase. Now repeat this pattern of 5 single crochet stitches and increase throughout the row for 5 more times until you reach the last stitch. Now making an increase in the last stitch of 10th row, and this completes your 10th row with 42 stitches. Now for the next few rows we are not going to add any increases, just making 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch Now make single crochet stitch, put the stitch marker, and for rows 11, 12 and 13 we are going to make just one single crochet stitch in each and every stitch to get the perfect round shape for the onion. After completing each row and before you start a new row, just remember to move the stitch marker up in order to identify the number of rows you are working. Now here I am working the last single stitch of row 13. So this completes your 13th row with 42 stitches. Now remove the stitch marker and make one single stitch in the next stitch. Now put the stitch marker back and this marks the beginning of your 14th row. Now we have already done one single stitch. That's the second one, 3, 4 and 5. Now after making 5 pieces, now we are going to join the next 2 stitches using an invisible decrease. For this, insert the hook into the front loops of next 2 stitches, drop a loop and make a single stitch. Now we are going to repeat this pattern. That's 2 single stitch, third one, 4, 5 and after making 5 stitches, make one invisible decrease. Now repeat this pattern throughout the row for 4 more times until you reach the starting point. Now make the last invisible decrease into the last 2 stitches of 14th row and this completes your row with 30 stitches. This is how the shape of our onion looks like after making 14 rows. Now let's continue with the pattern. Remove the stitch marker and make one single stitch into the next stitch. Now put the stitch marker into this stitch to mark the beginning of 15th row. Now make one single stitch in the next stitch. This counts for 2 single stitches. Now make an invisible decrease in the next 2 stitches. Now make 2 single stitches in the next 2 stitches. We are going to repeat this set of 2 single stitches, 1 invisible decrease and again 2 single stitches throughout the row. And we are going to repeat this pattern for 6 times. After making the last invisible decrease, make the last 2 single stitches and this completes your 15th row with 24 stitches. Now remove the stitch marker and make a single stitch in the next stitch and this starts the 16th row. Put the stitch marker back in place. Now make 2 single crochet stitches in next 2 stitches. This makes a total of 3 single stitches and then make an invisible decrease. Now we are going to repeat this pattern of 3 single stitches and an invisible decrease throughout the row until you reach the starting point. Here I am making the last invisible decrease and this completes your 16th row. This is really hard on my fingers. Okay, now we will have 24 stitches. Now remove the stitch marker and make a single stitch in the next stitch and put the stitch marker back in place to mark the beginning of 17th row. Now make an invisible decrease in the next 2 stitches and then make one single stitch. Now we are going to repeat this set of 1 single stitch, 1 invisible decrease and 1 single stitch. See, that's 1 single stitch. Then we have an invisible decrease and then in the next stitch we have a single stitch. Repeat this pattern for 4 more times throughout the row until you reach the starting point. Now make the last single stitch and this completes your 17th row with 18 stitches. Now remove the stitch marker and make one single stitch in the next stitch. Now put the stitch marker to mark the beginning of 18th row. Now after one single stitch, make one invisible decrease. Again one single stitch and one invisible decrease in the next stitch. Now repeat this pattern of one single stitch and one invisible decrease throughout the row until you reach the starting point. Now making the last invisible decrease in 18th row, and now you will have total of 12 stitches after completing this row. Now stop it here and add stuffing into this toy to hold the good shape of our onion. Take a good amount of Fiberfill and stuff it to the top at first, and then adjust the filling towards the sides of the toy, and make sure the toy is completely filled with the stuffing. Once the toy is fully stuffed and it holds a good shape, let's continue with our pattern. Now remove the stitch marker and let's begin by making an invisible decrease with the first 2 stitches. Now mark this stitch with a stitch marker. This is the first invisible decrease in your 19th row. Now continue to make invisible decreases throughout the row. That's the second one, and now continue until you reach the starting point. This is the last invisible decrease. You'll have a total of 6 stitches. Now remove the stitch marker and into the first stitch make a slip stitch. Now chain 1 and trim the excess thread by leaving a little long tail end, and we use this tail end to weave in the ends. Fasten off, and now with the help of a yarn needle we are going to close this hole. Now put the tail end into the yarn needle and finish your project as shown. Insert the needle into the front loops of all the 6 stitches in your last row and pull the tail end slightly to close the opening. Now into the next stitch, make a knot and weave in the ends for few times to secure this closing. Now trim the excess thread close to the project and tuck in this tail end. This completes the shape of our onion. Now let's add some embellishments to it, such as roots and face for it. For this I am using this brown color yarn and making a small tassel with the help of my fingers. I am making a tassel with around 4 to 5 rounds, and if you wish to have more roots for your onion, add more number of rounds to your tassel. And just making a knot at the middle using the small piece of thread which I have taken at the first. Now taking this thread into the needle and attaching it to the base of our onion as shown. Repeat the same process with the other thread as well. Now make a knot at the center to secure this tassel, and now trim the excess threads and slightly brush them up to have a look of the roots. If you want, you can trim the excess threads nicely. Now randomly scrape them to get the shape of a roots. Now let's add face and other details to it. Here I am using black color stones for eyes and a small piece of black color embroidery thread for mouth. And I am attaching it with the help of a fabric glue. If you wish, you can use your safety eyes, or you can embroider the same using a black color embroidery thread if you are gifting it for toddlers. It's the black color embroidery cotton thread, and instead of all the 6 layers I am just using 3 strands just to have a cute thickness for mouth. I have adjusted the glue here as I didn't like the shape previously. I have adjusted the shape and attached it to the mouth using a needle, and let it dry to make sure it sticks perfectly. So after it got completely dried, our cute little onion amigurumi is ready. This is looking so cute, and you can make it in white color to make it a white onion. And it's really good choice to have it in a kid's play basket. I hope you all enjoyed watching this tutorial. Do give this pattern a try and let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I hope you all enjoyed making this as well. See you all in the next video. Thank you for watching. Please like the video, share it and subscribe to DIY Crafts.